So you didn't die on the table then during that operation?
Nah, thank God. I have health insurance, so I had all kinds of privilege. Thanks for being willing to record this one early, my man. I know we usually record later in the week, but we're going to. Well, wait a second. Did you hear that?
No, what, are you getting feedback?
Must have been a figment of my imagination. Sorry, dude.
Is the podcast going to drop again?
No, I think we're okay. But
you said you're going to Florida?
Yeah. I'm going to go watch my sister graduate from law school, and she.
What part of Florida?
Whoa! You cannot say you didn't hear that.
I think I'm getting feedback.
No, dude, I swear that second time I heard it.
Wait,
I heard
be
that.
Quiet. Stop. Is that a flute?
No, it's fake Indian bullshit flute.
Oh God, it's a Chakotay flute, no, dude. Run!
Peter, run for your life! And welcome back to Feed Your Please. Ladies and gentlemen, we love your continued patronage, and by patronage we mean the fact that you're spending your time listening to us on the internet talk about a television show that's 23 years old. My name is Joseph. And Peter, I appreciate the warm wishes and the letting the internet know I survived my throat surgery. All is well, by the way. So
when the Klingons die, even though you lived, but like the other Klingons standing over, like they yell up at the Stovacor to let them know a warrior is coming. You lived on the table, so I yelled out to the internet to let Voyager fans know that more Voyager hate was coming.
I appreciate that you would be the Worf to my Jadzia in this situation, which that adds layers to our relationship, Peter. Layers I didn't know were there.
Yeah, I'd rather go with Gowron because I got some pretty good pro wrestler crazy eyes.
That's true, you do. Especially if you shift into Juggalo mode, but we won't tell people about that part of your life. So
that part of my life doesn't exist. Before you go around calling anybody a Juggalo, I want to point out that you cut out that whole segment of the last episode where I outed you on being a brony.
All right. Equally false accusations across the board.
A lot of fake news here, folks. You heard it first.
But what wasn't fake news is that we watched ourselves another episode of Voyager. Peter, did you want to hop right into it?
Yeah, real legit season 2 Voyager, too. I don't think this is one of the Voyagers that they actually recorded last season and held over a season.
Now, I didn't read much on the background on this. Hell, I don't even actually remember the name of it, come to think of it. Do you remember the title of the episode?
This is season 2, episode 2, Initiations. And I just watched this an hour ago because we're filming early, so this is all fresh in my mind. I didn't really have the 24 hours to ponder it and get too deep into the Wikipedias like I normally do. But yeah, season 2, episode 2, Initiations. And I believe this is a legitimate season 2 episode because they break out some new equipment, and I'll jump into that a little later. But they start off the episode, and here's my big conundrum. I can't nail down what kind of shuttlecraft this is. I was looking on Wikipedia for about that, and it said Class 2, but it's a Class 2 shuttle, Type 9 shuttlecraft. I don't know. It's nothing I ever saw in Next Gen. It looks pretty cool, whatever. But
I thought for sure it was a Type 6.
No, it is absolutely not a Type 6. The Type 6 does the nacelles were attached right up to the body. This one has pylons. And for anybody still listening out in the viewer, we appreciate you sticking with us through these little super nerd moments. But yeah, so
come on, they're here for this, Peter.
I don't know what the people really are here for at all, honestly.
What are you here for? Please tell us. Write us at feedyourplease@gmail.com.
If you're here for anything other than a bad attitude, you're going to be let down. But so the ship's flying, the shuttlecraft's flying with what I assume to be another bad luck committee. And sure enough, in there is the soulless Chakotay, and he's got his magic fake Indian cult kit. Is that what we're calling it?
He's got he's got the smallpox blanket. He's got his space peyote.
No. The hand vibrator.
Yeah, the hand vibrator, and he's got his magic space rock.
Was that from the Oregon Trail wall map?
Now I'm going to have to look back to see, because it could be the same Oregon Trail wall rock.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. That could be. Oh, God. Now I've all this indecision.
Yeah, I know.
But he's apparently off having a little solo meditation time. He's not trying to induct anybody into the cult. He's just going to roll out in his shuttlecraft.
He's flying out to go honor his father on his dad's death day in the middle of the Delta Quadrant with God knows what around. Like, we're going to jump back to some of my criticisms on season 1. Do not break these fucking shuttlecrafts out. If there is a shuttlecraft being used, there is going to be a problem. Why Janeway keeps signing off on it, I get the mission critical stuff, but Chakotay wanting to just get away from the ship in hostile space and needlessly endanger himself and potentially the rest of the crew ridiculously. And sure enough, we're going to get into the trouble that is the backbone of the episode. But I wanted to ask you a question. Do you think Janeway is out of line in approving this ridiculous notion to go fly off to another system and observe these religious rites?
I would say that if they were in the Alpha Quadrant, it would be a totally reasonable request, I think. But given everything that they've run into in the Delta Quadrant and all of the angry alien races that are out there to kill them and the total lack of support they have, I think she would have been entirely within her rights to say, hey, Commander, I will happily square away a fucking cargo bay totally empty for you, or, try and give you as much privacy as possible. But fuck you if you think you're taking a shuttlecraft into some ass-end nowhere part of space we know nothing about with your tender little ball sack just dangling out there waiting to be chomped on.
Hey, Chakotay, Tuvok's done running his live-action Starfleet boot camp for the Maquis in Shuttle Bay 3, and they've cleaned out most of the poison gases. Feel free to help yourself. What rank do you think someone would have to be on the ship before Jane was like, no, fuck you, I'm not letting you take a shuttlecraft and go cause an episode to happen?
Is this something that crewman Dolby gets to do? Is this a high-ranking officer only privilege?
Yeah. Hey, Cap. Tomorrow marks the anniversary of my wife's brutal murder at the hands of
murder.
Cardassian raping. I get a little cranky on that day. Can they take a shuttlecraft and just go get like rip-roaring drunk out in the middle of somewhere else, far away from everybody else? That'd be a good one to approve. That would be some forward thinking for Dobie, I think, and some great anger control.
All right, Dobie. No, you get 6 hours of uncut, raw, safeties off holodeck time to do whatever you want. And the only thing on this, crewman Dolby, is I don't want to know what you do in there. Yeah. Whatever it is, you delete the fucking record when you're done, and you never speak of it again. And that is the only requirement.
So Chakotay's folding out his his voodoo kit, and then they cut to another scene on a Kazon vessel, which it's not part of the Nistrum. We'll later come to find out these are Kazon Olga, which is like a different sect, and their ships apparently look like, I would say, indoor flea markets at dusk.
Yes, that's a good. You can always tell you're on an antagonist ship because
if it's filthy.
Specific lack of lighting, and that they haven't had maid service in a while.
And general smoke in the air for some reason. Maybe they just got crew members who vape heavy, and that's where all that...
it's gonna stink in there then. Oh, God, all that vape
just
smoke.
Cotton
all those
candy.
mouth fedoras just out there just puffing away.
Yeah.
Everyone with their bobulators just going nuts. Can't have that.
But they lay down what's going on, and there's some young lad on the Kazon vessel who will come to know named Carr, who's going to go through his rite of passage and give him a chance to go out there and prove his name and go after Chakotay. So this kid Carr goes flying off in some Kazon light attack craft, and starts firing on Chakotay's shuttlecraft. Here's what I found was interesting. He starts taking shots. He has to ask the computer what's going on. The computer's like, oh, hey, we're getting shot at and hit. And Chakotay takes the time to clean up his Native American hand vibrator rock. I think there was a severed bird wing and it's like some furs in there. Like
fake Native American bird wing space kit.
And let's clarify real quick here, because I think to the uninitiated, we are being extremely culturally insensitive right now. All this stuff has been proven to be bullshit. I don't know, the guy who they had consulting to make sure that they were, checking off all the right boxes for Native American respect and doing things authentically was a fraud. I assume that everything that they're trying to pass off as Chakotay-isms is all bullshit, and basically we're being led to respect things that where some liar and a thief abusing Paramount executives to basically a snake oil salesman. So none of this stuff's real, and it's some guy's grandiose lies to get a paycheck. Anyways, so Chakotay's wrapping up all of this stuff before he bothers to get up on the shuttlecraft controls to respond to an active attack on him. I found this to be mind-blowing.
I would like to point out that in between the attack, the initial attack and then the continuation, there was a revelation that I'm sure you noticed because I noticed. Did you notice there was a skip intro button starting with this episode on Netflix?
No, I did not, because my daughter was climbing on my face.
Well, that's like a good reason to miss it, but it's there now. It's there for both of us.
Thank God. So he jumps on, and a couple things go down during this attack. One, we learn that Voyager is apparently not within earshot of Chakotay. Not only did he have to get off and leave the ship, but he had to go way the fuck past Voyager actively being within a response distance to God knows what could happen in this hostile Delta Quadrant. Two, Chakotay attempts, and this is once he gets around to getting behind the controls of the shuttlecraft, he starts hailing this Kazon vessel, trying to negotiate and roll some diplomacy on him before sending out a general SOS to Voyager. The computer, by the way, also doesn't care and is sending out no SOS signals. So inevitably, when he, neutralizes this ship a little bit later on, of course, the few shots the Kazon kid did land knock out their long-range communications, and Chakotay's basically stuck.
I mean, how shitty is this Kazon craft that it took 4 or 5 uninterrupted shots at this type whatever shuttlecraft and kind of damaged it, damaged a few systems, and then one shot from Chakotay after pulling a sweet loop trick puts him in the hurt locker and disables his craft and forces it to explode.
I want to peel back some sarcasm real quick. This is probably the coolest shuttlecraft space fight scene I think I've seen any of the Star Treks.
That is not a high bar.
No, it's a very low bar, and it drove home a couple, a big point to me. I think my biggest Star Trek complaint about all of the shows as a whole, the LCARS light up touch screen interface on the stuff, it's so boring for piloting ships. I get the big capital class ships, it's mostly the computer doing work, but anytime you see a shuttlecraft, at some point there's inevitably going to be tight maneuvers that they have to pull off, and them just blindly rubbing some buttons is so unimpressive and boring. I wish they'd have a joystick in these things, especially when you've got a shuttle dogfight like this where he's actually pulling off some legit moves and he's just rubbing a circle and tapping another button. I always find it to be a big letdown.
Are you sure you want another manual steering?
That was a high point for me in Insurrection. When I was a little kid and I saw that joystick come out, I was like, finally, they're
activate the manual steering column.
Yeah.
Fuck, really?
I also think it's a good callback. Sometimes I have not hard time. It's easy, since I've been watching Star Trek for so long, to fail to realize that the Federation are the technocrats that they are, and that stuff that since I've been watching Star Trek since junior high, things that are staples to the show really do need to be viewed as fantastic and unrealistic technology that would be nothing short of magic to lesser species. And I think that the shuttlecraft really do encapsulate that well. You've got pretty much all of the big Federation magic buttons getting checked on something roughly the size of, an
RV.
An RV. You've got transporters wrapped into these things, replicators, warp drives, some pretty badass weaponry. It's a cool everything wrapped up into one. This is why the Federation is badass at the end of the day.
It certainly is miniaturization of all the things that Kazon won, and it's a shame they kind of just don't talk about that. I kind of was surprised that upon the rewatch that it didn't come up more, that they had basically captured all of the Federation technology they wanted to acquire earlier in miniature. But before we get to that,
you're right. Chakotay, they absolutely don't talk about that. Like everything I just said, it never really clicked into place. Like everything that makes the Federation badass, they had sitting in their shuttle bay, and they just fucking squander that entire chance.
Like there's not even a line of dialogue from the Kazon that capture him. Like, oh shit, we just got the fucking mother load. Like all the shit we were after in season 1 that the Nistrum wanted, we got it now, bitch. We're gonna be the fucking King Kongs.
Yeah. So, anyways, Chakotay disables this Kazon piece of garbage radio flyer. He starts trying to talk to the person who was attacking him. Like, hey,
he's got this idea of a Kazon in a fucking red wagon out there, like, I got
basically
you.
what it is. I mean, he just bitch slaps him once. I think he only goes to like disable his engines, and he ends up blowing the whole fucking thing up. Beams the kids out of there last minute. I thought for sure that this kid was going to wake up, and like while Chakotay was fooling around on the computer, since he doesn't bother to restrain him, that the kid was going to come up and like judo chop him in the back of the neck, and that's how Chakotay was going to end up a captive or something. But they go to fly away and start heading back towards Voyager since the antenna's down. Carr, the young Kazon kid, he wakes up, and at this point, Chakotay's got some Federation issue shackles on his ass.
So it's worth pointing out at this point that Carr is being played by Aron Eisenberg, who is far better known in Star Trek for playing Nog on Deep Space Nine. Now, I'm a huge fan of this guy for the nerdiest possible reason. He was really big into playing World of Warcraft when I was, and so he talked all about it all the time. And so I got to know who this dude was. And how old do you think Aron Eisenberg was when this episode happened?
I'm going to say 19.
You would be incorrect, sir.
Was he like 25?
27.
No way. That dude's got to be super short.
He's 50 years old now.
No.
Yeah. He had kidney problems when he was like 13 and had to go on dialysis and eventually had a kidney transplant. So he basically got stuck at 5 foot tall. And he got cast as Nog on Deep Space Nine to play across Shirok Lofton, who was playing Jake Sisko, as like the other quote-unquote kid, which turned out super awkward when Shirok Lofton grew to like 6'3" and he was stuck at 5 foot. And also, something about Aron Eisenberg is he is in iron shape.
Dude, I got that written down. This kid's forearms look like they're made out of like twisted steel.
Yeah, he's got the gun show going, and the thing about him is that because he's had health problems his whole life, he's always like stayed in his best shape as he possibly can. And dude, he looks like he's like mini me of Bruce Lee. He looks like he is ready to throw the fuck down.
Well, let me talk about this guy since you brought it up. I really like this Carr character, and I think he was a high point through this whole episode and really made the episode worth watching in my book. I was hoping that by the end of it, they were going to find some reason to bring him onto Voyager, and that's what I really felt the whole episode was playing towards. And again, it's like the 37s episode. Like they're getting legitimate opportunities to pick people from the Delta Quadrant up and diversify and make this crew more interesting to watch than, because I still up to this point, I don't really think they've got that many interesting characters. Certainly the Doctor, I guess Tom Paris, and then who isn't just a boring fucking...
Kes is not boring. I'd say she's probably one of the more compelling characters, to be honest.
And ironically, she's the one that they get rid of. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's not a lot of personality on the ship.
Yeah, and the problem is, and I think we actually touched on this the last normal broadcast episode we put out, they chose not to go the ensemble route. That's what DS9 did. And actually, Aron Eisenberg's Nog is the perfect character to describe that phenomenon. So on that show, they chose to have these non-main cast members that showed up on a recurring basis. Nog was in 40 episodes. You've got Rom, who's Nog's father. He shows up a similar amount of time. You've got Garrick, who I think maybe he's in 30-some episodes. He's a huge piece of that show, even though he's not an everyday player. And these recurring characters were an integral part of the series and had their own episodes sometimes.
Yeah.
They just decided kind of to half-heartedly looked at maybe doing that in the first season. It looked like that's what the whole Joe Carey thing was and a couple of the other ascended extras. And then they just didn't. They just stuck with the main cast rather than making it more an ensemble thing.
Well, I'm glad this kid had Nog going in the background, because everything he did with Carr I thought was cool, and I was genuinely disappointed that by the end of this, Carr is not on Voyager. And I agree, man. These Kazon Olga costumes look like they were designed specifically to show off this kid's arms. And let's jump over real quick. Cut forward a little bit. Eventually, Chakotay, who has taken this kid captive, and he's hey, you should have killed me. Worse things happen than death to Kazon Olga, who don't die gloriously in battle. The Kazon Olga mothership shows up, grabs Chakotay's shuttle and a tractor beam, drags him on board, in the process acquiring all of the fantastic Federation technologies you've pointed out, to which zero shits are given, because everybody's more preoccupied by some teenager who failed to kill or be killed, and now they are holding him in the middle of their gypsy flea market and showing you how life is kind of on this Kazon Olga ship. It's at this point I realize that not only are these these Kazon outfits designed to show off this kid's forearms. These Kazon Olga, they look like a bunch of white dudes with dreadlocks wearing tie-dye shirts. Basically, these guys, it looks like a spaceship full of skeevy drug dealers, right?
They do, especially in the hair. These are people who don't shower. It's just I feel the stank coming across the screen.
Mm-hmm. That's what all that smoke is. It's not vape. It's just BO floating around down there and patchouli.
I'm glad you brought that up. It reminds me of some of the hippies that used to penetrate my undergrad program at GW.
That's what I'm telling you. White dudes with dreads and tie-dye.
So a key thing to say about the episode from this point forward. What I liked about it was all the Kazon stuff. Carr was a great character. I agree with you. I kind of knew that obviously he wasn't going to be a figure not just from Voyager, but also he's a regular on a different show. And he was clearly cast in this role because he was a mature enough actor to deliver on this role and still appear to be a kid. Mm-hmm. But there was some small scenes there at the beginning between Carr and the Kazon leader.
Was that there's two upper senior management, right? There's the leader, and then there's this other guy, Haliz, I think his name was.
Not Haliz, the main leader.
Right, but Haliz, I just want to point out, was a dead ringer from Bob from '89 Batman, the Joker's main goon who pulls a pistol on Jack Porkins.
No kidding.
Yeah, Jack Porkins was the fat cop. Oh, it's Eckert from Batman '89. I don't know if it was Bob playing this Haliz guy, but it looked just like him.
Hey, you're the one that registered the Tackleberry win last episode from the 37th. So,
well, Tackleberry's a face I'll never forget, but there's no way that could have been Bob. Bob would have to be like super.
By the way, I watched all of Police Academy 2 after that episode. I just needed to.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm not. It was awesome. Okay, so there's a quiet scene between the main Kazon leader and Carr where the Kazon leader is obviously like heartbroken at the fact that he has failed his initiation rite and is like not really wanting to punish him for it. It's a lot of like implied language and interaction, and it's real small, and it's like a 25-30 second interaction, and it tells you so much about those two characters' relationship and their history, and it's such a show not tell situation that I almost like, am I actually watching Star Trek? Are they allowing this kind of subtlety on screen? This is amazing.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, prior to him actually showing up, Carr is walking around this flea market that they call a ship, and he's pointing at different garbage stapled to the wall where in fact they're calling it trophies. And one of the trophies that there's like the one that two really stood out. One was a part of the Kazon Nistrum frigate hull. And again, the Nistrum, we've been told, was a section of the Kazon tribe that's like the most violent and ruthless. They're the ones with the secret decoder poison ring that they jabbed that dude with the neck in season 1.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that these Olga got a leg up on like the baddest of the bad and lived to tell was impressive. But then he goes over it, like the last thing he pulls is a bracelet off the wall. And Carr says, essentially, the guy who would, the scene you just described where he's like, hey, I'm sorry that, brings me no joy that you're going to have to be punished for failing. But that guy killed his Carr's older brother, right?
Yeah, I think that was his suggestion. And I mean, the impression I got was that he was also somehow related to Carr as well. Like, there was almost familial, his regret in that scene. And it was so short and was so, like, I'm harping on it because it was like, it took me aback how they allowed, the audience just to kind of absorb that moment without telling you specifically what was going on.
Yeah.
Throughout the rest of the episode, when we see like Kazon background or Kazon specific information, it's pretty good. It's just everything with Chakotay that ends up blowing ass.
Chakotay, speaking of which, is standing there in the middle of the flea market, and I notice for whatever fucking reason they let this guy get off the shuttlecraft with a tricorder on him.
Yeah, I noticed that too. No explanation as to why.
Was not on him at any point while he was sitting on the ship conducting his fake ritual to contact his dead father. And it's like they're getting off and like, you get off the vessel and hey, grab that tricorder from that equipment locker on your way out and make sure you've got that on. It's going to be important later on. Kazon, pretty hospitable guys. Like they say that, hey, Carr, I'm sorry you fucked up and didn't die out in the field, and we're boys and everything, so it brings me no pleasure that we're gonna have to kill you tonight. And then he's talking some shit to Chakotay about how much he disrespects the uniform, fleshing out regrettably, somehow in one episode they managed to flesh out a Delta Quadrant bad guy race, the Kmart Klingons, way better than the Vidians.
They definitely, I don't know who, I'll have to look back and see who wrote this, but they lay down all kinds of information about why the Kazon are the way they are that it makes sense.
Yeah. So they were, and they'll talk about it later on, that the Kazon shared a homeworld with the Trabe, Trabe, and it seemed like the Trabe had their shit together and were pretty regimented and wanted nothing to do with the Kazon. So the Kazon lived in the ghetto. The Trabe, lived the good life. And then all the Kazon unified, overthrew the Trabe, and looks like probably killed them all and took their technology and went off to be space trash.
And again, the method by which they explain all of this isn't like you get one big long exposition dump. It's throughout the episode, they make reference to the way that they live their life and their disdain for
authority,
Federation technology, and authority.
And specifically uniforms.
And maybe this actually goes back to our criticism in an odd way. Like, yeah, they talk about they hate the uniforms, they hate the regimented level of their society, and they make reference of how their technology isn't welcome either. And from the background we get from the Kazon, from this perspective, is part of what they hated was that this race that they were sharing the planet with had a technological advantage on them, and their techno-barbarism in some way is a rejection of that.
Luddites.
And that is almost purposeful, and maybe that would explain why they didn't care that they captured Chakotay's shuttle.
Mm-hmm. But these Kazon, super hospitable. They're like, look, man, you guys are both going to die tonight. You're going to get executed. But, hey, get Chakotay some food and a car. You're going to get to eat it, my right hand on the table. Like, food's a big deal for the Kazon, and they're very quick to share, which is interesting for a species that doesn't even have, ready access to water. So very generous.
It's almost like the Mongolians, like ancient, Genghis Khan era steppe people. How they, had a sort of a hospitality right, but they also had a very brutal warrior ethos, a horrifically brutal warrior ethos.
Joe, I'm going to stop you right now. I think we're making the Kazon better than they deserve to be. I'm going to have to stop you right now.
Well,
Stop fixing this episode. Stop fixing this series.
No, don't worry. This episode is still garbage because Chakotay manages to drag it down every time he opens his fucking mouth.
It's not his worst work. I'll say that. So they flack back over to Voyager, which is finally figured out. I'm going to do you guys all a favor and skip over some snarf complaining.
Can I just point out that
you were glad that they're actually doing training in the holodeck instead of Cargo Bay 3 and some fucking Jeffries tubes?
I was watching this with my wife, and Stevie actually took the remote out of my hands when Snarf showed up and paused it and looked at me like dead in the eye and said, I swear to you, my grandmother has a pattern on her shower curtain that's the exact same as what he's wearing on his chest right now. I mean, it's just another adventure in him finding the ugliest fucking possible replicator patterns for its clothes, but otherwise, yeah, whatever. Snarf's complaining that he doesn't get to be fucking Errol Flynn or some
6
shit.
hours later, after Chakotay took off in the shuttle, they're like, by the way, where's Chakotay at? We haven't heard from him in a full day of work. And, since he decided to fly so far away, we don't have, active scanning on him. They go off to investigate. I also want to point out that after Chakotay rescued Carr and he's flying away, the computer is like, ding, ding, warning, enemy vessel approaching. It's like, where was this computer warning, before you got jumped the first time? Did you just forget to turn on the enemy detection system? So they start flying off, and I don't even know who the hell's on the bridge. Was there anybody that we didn't see this episode? The doctor's there for 20 seconds. Anybody else get cut?
Everybody had at least expository dialogue. Harry Kim had the minimal amount, but everyone was there.
Yeah. So they're flying off and they're like, oh, we're picking up debris. And they start listing off all the chemical elements that they're finding. And for a second, part of me just wishes that they would have found another 1936 Ford truck floating in fucking somebody's. What, another one? Wow. It's like a Ford dealership out here. Are we going to
find the Lindbergh baby now?
Sir, I'm detecting Jimmy Hoffa. I would have respected the 37s more had they found Jimmy Hoffa instead of fucking Amelia Earhart on that stupid planet.
They cut back to the Kazon vessel, and the Kmart Klingons are about to essentially force Chakotay to kill Kmart Nog, Kazon Nog, Carr, and in doing so, grant him the death that he should have been given. But of course, Chakotay is just trying to preach high and mighty human ethics and pulls one of those classic Star Trek fighting stunts where he drops the weapon on accident and then tackles the guy and gets the gun on his neck so that he can, hostage negotiate his way out of there.
So these badass Kmart Klingons who have done nothing this episode but talk about how they give zero fucks and are willing to die for glory. Yeah. Chakotay busts out some moves out of the Steven Seagal catalog, gets leader guy in a hammerlock, and has a gun to his head. Meanwhile, there's like 6 other dudes with like, hobo rifles pointed at him. Like, you're telling me they wouldn't just be like, fuck it, and just, there's 6 of us, there's 1 of him, and if we kill our boss in the process, promotions for us, great. They instead acquiesce to all of Chakotay's demands to get on a shuttle and fly away. And yeah, in the process, he gets Carr to like bail and jump ship on him.
And they wind up on the shuttlecraft, heading out, trying to escape. They do a whole lot of dialogue rather than space battle action, trying to save on that CG budget.
To be fair, Carr's like, hey, look, I know their shield frequencies. We can like totally cheat like Star Trek Generations and just hit these guys through the shields and, disable their weapons or take out their propulsion or any of like other dozen things other than just fly around while they shoot at us until we have to crash land on a fucking planet.
The part of this episode I hated, of course, as I've already mentioned, is Chakotay. And the fact that he is just almost pacifistic in not wanting to even attempt to disable the ship is one of many things that he does that strains credulity. In fact, he breaks it here in a couple scenes, as far as I'm concerned, with the dialogue they decide to give him. It's ridiculous. But it makes no sense why he wouldn't even, like, oh yeah, it hit me with those shield frequency things. I'm going to hit their engines and then we get the fuck out of here. End of episode. Like,
wait, Joe, real quick, refresh my memory. Who is Chakotay?
He's the first officer of the Starship
Voyager.
Voyager.
But before that, who was Chakotay?
Oh, I believe he is a wanted terrorist.
Well, terrorist and pacifist, they both have the last few letters at the end. It's the same thing.
Don't you fucking worry. I will get on a soapbox and tell you exactly how I feel about them glossing over that he was a fucking terrorist, a few months ago and in universe time. Very shortly. Like all of the rage, like when they took the tumors out, they didn't take out my rage. Okay? I am still filled with them and I am ready and able to deploy it, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting just a little bit longer.
Okay, well, let's mosey things along. So this shuttlecraft gets fucking blown up. No big deal. I'm sure Voyager has an infinite supply of these things. And right before it blows up, they get within like could kind of make a transport to this M-class planet, or maybe you just die in space. Luckily, Chakotay doesn't have a soul weighing down his transport weight, so he and young Carr get beamed down to the surface. And as we described earlier, luckily Chakotay has a tricorder on him. Why would he still have it during the whole scene on the Kazon ship? Like, he could have very feasibly just grabbed a goddamn tricorder before they beamed down. It's ridiculous that he had it for that scene, but they get down and Carr lays down some info that this planet is Kazon training and that the whole place is booby trapped and that they're going to have to work together to get through this thing. That Carr is still real butthurt he didn't get killed, and that he is probably going to just kill Chakotay for shits and giggles. And Chakotay's all like, I love you, and I'm going to save your life forever.
At some point, I was expecting Father Figure by George Michael to start playing in the background. But absent that, of course, they're on yet another convenient Southern California-looking planet. And they head into some caves that look like they're retread from actually State of Flux, the Seska Caves, where they have another bit of dialogue about their differences, their cultural differences. And this is where things just completely fall apart for me, and I hate everything that's coming out of Chakotay's mouth. Because Chakotay...
So Carr's line is that he wants to get his adult name, and the only way you can get an adult name in the Kazon Ogla sect is you have to basically kill somebody and get your gangster street cred.
Which I get. It's another like warrior ethos type of character trait. And since these guys are sort of pseudo Klingons, it's a almost pseudo Klingon trait. But what kills me is Chakotay is obviously supposed to be the voice of opposition against this violence. He's been essentially espousing nonviolence the entire time. And part of what he talks about is the value of his name, even though it was something that he was given at birth and didn't earn. And then he starts to talk about how much he cherishes his Federation uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And I went blind
with
rage.
The uniform that he laid down to go be a terrorist?
Yes! The very uniform that he decided to lay down to be a terrorist. And then in the next piece of dialogue, he says that his people learned that land doesn't belong to anybody. Mind you, this man became a terrorist and laid down his precious uniform over a border dispute about what land belonged to who.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ, are the writers unaware of the history of the character they're writing for? This guy has literally done the exact opposite of what he said.
This episode, there is nothing at all in continuity in this entire episode that would have any hint towards the fact that this dude was a Maquis former Starfleet officer. Like, he is a Starfleet officer at full face value 100% of this episode.
Yeah, like this only makes sense in a world where this character is Will Riker instead of Chakotay. Because of all of the people on Voyager, this guy should be the one that's A, 100% understanding of territory and home being so incredibly important that you're willing to fight for it, and B, being willing to kill people for it. This fucking guy, he should be the one who's like, I get you, kid. I fucking understand you. Instead, they have him throughout with this absurd pacifistic mentality, won't fucking do anything to say. Like, lets his shuttle get shot up like 6 times before he bothers to disable Car's ship. He won't bother to disable the ship that is pursuing them when he's got the shield frequency to do so, and then stands there and tells this kid, yeah, no, I totally love this uniform, and land doesn't belong to anybody, and hippy-dippy shit all day long. Fuck you.
Chakotay, who was just, the shithead episode, bragging about how he's got all these sweet Maquis super evasion tricks and that, nobody can stay on his trail. The theme for season 2 so far between the 30... No, I guess it wouldn't be the theme because 37s didn't do it. But, if we jump back to the season finale of Voyager 1, which was Learning Curve, it's the wrong person in the wrong episode. You got Tuvok shoehorned into a mentor... mutual understanding, emotional connection with not alien, but foreign element. It should have been Janeway interacting with the Maquis discipline problems.
Agreed.
This one, you could have taken anybody other than Chakotay to espouse Federation morality and high laurels, and you put the worst. You put the worst possible person in Learning Curve as the lead character. You got the worst possible person in this Initiations. I don't know what the next episode is yet, but that'll be our little game. It's going to be who is the worst person to plug into this situation. And I agree with everything you said. So you cut back up to Voyager, and they're following a cookie trail of blown up shuttlecraft and remnants. I like that they have to beam fragments of these shuttlecraft onto the ship to examine that the external sensors somehow aren't good enough to see very clear Federation markings on this shuttlecraft debris.
They do go, science up the solution pretty quickly, that they got to go down to this planet and see what's going on. And Janeway decides that she's going to go herself, and Tuvok
What the fuck was with that, man? Like, okay, your XO is missing. You're going to leave, and then you're going to take the next highest person. Like, why could Tuvok not just go do this goddamn thing on his own? You're going to leave your entire ship now with Lieutenant Convict and Snarf.
You're gonna leave the guy who was sweating it out in a New Zealand prison camp, 8 months ago, in charge of your vessel, because you want to charge off after your former terrorist first officer, along with the next person in the command tree. Great. I mean, I'm glad you got such confidence in sex offender Tom, but that doesn't seem like a tactically wise choice.
Do you remember 2 episodes ago when I said that Janeway was the worst character on Voyager? My opinion is not being swayed the better. She is perhaps the bigger saboteur between her and Neelix. I think she's really the one out there trying to get Voyager's mission to fail.
It does lead to a fun scene, though. I do like the Tom, trying to assert his command authority only to be thwarted by a space cat that got on the furniture and was feeling himself a little bit and decided to start like...
He was very happy when he got on that chair, too. There was a real look of pride.
Hey, listen, I know what my cat's face looks like when he's in places that he shouldn't be, and Neelix had that look on his face. And he starts feeling himself sitting in that chair, and like they have this dialogue scene with the Kazon.
Neelix is like, when I finish killing everyone on this ship with my Inspector Gadget, Dr. Claw-esque plots of vicious cheese and whatever other nonsense I've gotten into, I'm going to enjoy taking this chair for my own and owning the most powerful ship in the sector. I thought he did a real, their scene with the Kazon when they show up. Neelix is a shifty little fuck, man. He played his cards strong in that scene.
Yeah, I liked it. Like, I like that Tom was just kind of unsure of his command authority because it's probably not something he's ever done before. And Neelix just kind of walks all over him, and he sort of lets him because it's working. So he's like, "Fuck it." Neelix is
fuck it. If this garbage cat wants to have it out with these Kmart people, so be it.
They have more depressing dialogue on the planet with Carr talking about how he's pretty much completely fucked if he doesn't get his name, and the only way he gets his name is if he kills Chakotay.
He doesn't even really vet that as a possible outcome from, like, he's going through what's going to happen, and Chakotay's like, well, if we get off this planet, where are you going to go? Can't you go to one of the other sects? And again, some of the cool Kazon world building that they gift on this episode, he says, no, the other tribes will view me as an outcast, and protocol on an outcast is you catch them, you cut a finger off, and then you toss them on their way. And Chakotay's like, well, how many other tribes are out there? And that's one of the cool things also. It's really hurting me to go to these Kmart Klingons who we shit on all over the first season and actually give them, respect points on this. Back when Chakotay was still on the vessel talking to the leader, Chakotay's like, I didn't know this was your space if I had a map. And they're like, our borders change daily and we don't keep maps. And the same thing this kid says, Chakotay's like, well, how many, sects are out there? And he's like, 18, but that changes every day. Like, I really like the chaos these Kazon find themselves in.
And it's another parallel with fucking steppe people in Genghis Khan era. It's just they obviously drew inspiration from that. And yeah, we shit on them because they're worth shitting on a lot of the time. But this is the only time so far where the Kazon have come through with any fucking personality at all.
Other than really sweet, poisonous decoder rings.
Aside from that.
And so Chakotay, to my delight's like, well, hey, you could come with me. And I was like, all right, well, maybe they're going to do this. And he balks at the idea. And it's like, well, I don't want to go. Plus, the closer we get to your homeworld, the further we are from mine. And it's like, well, if all your homeworld represents is cut off thumbs and index fingers, like, isn't that a pretty sweet deal for you?
Hey, Aron Eisenberg's guns can only be contained by one show at a time. You cannot bring that gun show onto too many Star Trek properties. It's just going to be too much. I respect that.
I guess that's kind of a cool benefit to working on Star Trek is, we jump back to the Jetral episode. I can't remember that guy's name, but, he was the Romulan admiral. He was a Starfleet admiral or something out of Enterprise, and a couple other really juicy roles. He was future Alexander Rozhenko, I think, in the one episode. Mm-hmm. If you're an alien and you've got prosthetics on your face, you can play so many different characters in Star Trek and nobody's going to bat an eye because, it's a plausible different character under that mask.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's how they get away with the reuses that you're talking about. I mean,
so here was my big takeaway for the episode. they show Janeway and Tuvok down on the surfaces. They're kind of canvassing, looking for looking for Chakotay and this kid. And finally, there's radiothermic bullshit or some stupid explanation as to why they can't get clear sensor readings. The transporters don't work. You can't communicate. Blah 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 blah. So they're searching the planet. They get some short range readings that there's Kazon rolling up on them, and they're like, "Oh fuck." So we're in season 2 now, right? And one of the cool things about Next Gen was each season that they would progress into, the budget would get bigger and cooler stuff would happen. New uniforms, new this, new that, new set pieces. Voyager doesn't really have that luxury. They came in the beginning with all their money and squandered it. But, there's really no opportunities to grow things. But I caught 2 very distinct things in this episode. One, they're rocking new tricorders. They look a lot more smaller and sleeker with a lot more lights. They're definitely not the next gen tricorders that they were using last season. And then I also see they switched over to like the extra curved phasers that are like the Type 2 Vipers, but they're curved to the point where they almost look like boomerangs. I never cared for them.
I definitely noticed what you're saying about the tricorder because the bottom piece is much thinner. Yes. That was what was super noticeable, was the bottom piece was significantly thinner, and I agree that they upped their prop game a bit from the early TNG stuff.
So what really drew my attention to it, though, is when they're up on the rocks and like, oh shit, the Kazon are coming, we better get ready. I noticed nobody's rocking phaser dick anymore. Like they specifically designed these props. The phasers actually have, and I could see, my big screen TV, the phasers have like full mold holsters that when they clip the phaser into place, instead of just being a Velcro tab dangling oddly off the front of them like an erect penis, these things actually curve around their hip. And it's probably why they're as curved as they are. And I was so interested. I'm like, so they've got new phasers and new tricorders. Like, I actually looked that stuff up before the show. This is like all brand new Federation technology that gets rolled out in Deep Space Nine, since they're running like concurrently. And it's like, all right, so Voyager out in the middle of nowhere somehow gets the upgrade alert and starts printing off all the new cutting edge Federation technology out in the Delta Quadrant. Well, it looks cool, so I guess at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. But pretty big inconsistency for the show.
They probably just had, they were using up the old ones before they got into the new stash. You know how it is. You've got the new replacements on standby, but you can get a couple more months out of the old ones. You use those up first. I get it. They always had them. That's my headcanon. I'm sticking to it. Damn it.
They had a meeting sometime between the two of them, like, I'm tired of everything I walk into. People thinking the crew as a collective got tired of that. Is that a phaser strapped to the front of you? Just happy to see me.
Eventually, on the surface, the Scooby Squad encounters the Kazon, who front as if they are helping McHelpersons. Unsurprisingly, this is a terrible trap. And even more unsurprisingly than that, Janeway falls into that trap.
Janeway, the trap queen?
Yes! Once again! It's like we knew this would keep coming up.
It was a pretty legit trap, let's be fair. Like, the Tricore readings, like, they're like, hey, we're going in this general direction. The Kazon are like, oh, what wonderful toys you have. Would be a strong throwback to Bob's boss, the Joker, who says, can we go with that for our titles? What wonderful toys?
Sure.
Yes,
I got you, man. Absolutely.
But he's like, hey, look, we should go this way. And then Tuvok's like, my sensor's showing high shit over there, and we should go to the left. And then the Kazon dude's like, and this is like Kazon Mega Boss, right?
Yeah.
What's their captain rank?
First mage. Yeah.
He's like, I apologize. My dude is trying to deceive you. We should go this way. And I don't think he says we should go this way. He's just like, I think my guy's trying to deceive you. And the Starfleet on their own is like, all right, we'll keep going to the right. I thought that was a pretty crafty trap. Like,
it's not like it takes a lot of effort to trap these guys. These guys have been trapped by the Vidians. They have been trapped by the Kazon. They have been
They were trapped by the Skeevians for 2 weeks.
They were trapped by the Skeevians. They even almost got trapped by the 37s and like the fucking BDSM Southern California aliens that were humans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a low bar to
They got trapped by the shitheads by way of Tom Paris.
It's true.
Everybody, damn Voyager. I thought it was a legit trap in this case, though. And meanwhile, back in the cave, communications have been reestablished, and Chakotay knows that Starfleet's coming, and because unfortunately Carr's got a contract with DS9 and can't stick around on Voyager, he's going to have to go home, and Chakotay, being the nice, not at all a terrorist that he is, decides that he's going to do this kid a solid and basically fake his own death so this Carr guy can get some Kazon street credit and hopefully get his name and be accepted back into the Kazon Olga without having to lose any fingers in the process. So he radios over and says, tell Sickbay to get ready for a code white, and then throw him back to some season 1 pure necromancy, informs Carr that Federation technology is able to resuscitate anybody who is less than 2 minutes brain dead.
I appreciate that he tried to call ahead to make sure that the doctor's raised dead was not on cooldown. He was ready to and willing to cast. We've hit this so many times already, the ridiculousness of the idea that somehow Federation medical technology has reached the point where they can bring people who are back from brain dead. Okay, at least we're like laying down some rules. Like there's a time limit and some shit like that. Like I guess that's an improvement, but I still think it's almost genre breaking for them to have that level of medical technology.
But Chakotay is willing to, like I said, to do this kid a solid. And it's worth pointing out that during one of these cave scenes, Chakotay was pretending to be asleep. Carr rolled up on him, took the tricorder, turned it off, and had a gun right on Chakotay's head and could have dusted him right there in his sleep, and he didn't. So, we've become pretty fond of Carr up to this point. The Starfleet, who had been trapped in a bubble, end up shooting their way out. Surprise, surprise, with their mega blasters. The Kazon show up right as Carr's got a gun pulled on Chakotay in this little staged, I don't know what you want to call it. He's going to put on a good show. Starfleet shows up, and you've got not quite a Mexican standoff, but all eyes on what Carr's going to do. And Carr starts playing along with Chakotay's plan, saying that, I only came out here to be able to kill him and regain my honor. But you know what, mentor type figure, as you've told me so many times, you can't atone for failure in the battlefield. And then in what I thought was a very surprising move and very impressive for a piece of Voyager storytelling, instead of blasting Chakotay for the easy plot resolution, spins on his heel and shoots his mentor dead.
Yeah, it was a very gangster move. I really liked that's what they went with as the resolution, instead of allowing the very predictable ending go through of I really killed him and there wasn't really any consequences at the end, which I really thought was actually going to happen. I didn't remember the end, but the fact that he turned on who we at the beginning were given the impression might have been a family figure, at the very least was a mentor figure, and just turns around and just shoots him dead, and then tells the next guy in charge, all right, now you're in charge, brother. So that's
Bob. Yeah, he Hazine, Bob from Batman 89. He turns to him and says, look, you can do with me what you want, but you're in charge now because I just killed your boss and hooked you up, and you can just kill me dead here and gain nothing, or I'll basically swear the blood oath to you and follow you into battle whenever. And
Bob makes him his number one guy.
Bob's like, I can appreciate the value of a good henchman. I'm going to give you a second chance, and you're cool to go. And Carr goes up to Chakotay, and he's gives him the standard, we might have been friends here, but if I ever see you in a Kazon space again, I'm going to kill you. Now, his back was to Bob at this point. I was really hoping the camera would pan around. You'd see like this kid's face as Chakotay is still on his knees and see this kid like very overboard, like silently mouth, "Thank you."
You're great. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. But so he lays out this warning, like, if I see you again, I'm going to get you. And it makes me wonder if we're going to get to see the Car character again at any point out in space, and if he's going to make good on his or the words here and genuinely go for the throat, or if Starfleet has a legit friend now somewhere in the Kazon power structure.
Bad news. It ends here. We never see anything about this ever again.
What do we keep saying about Voyager's squandered opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, got a quality performance, some good background, and some interesting Kazon material, and nothing. They don't do anything with any of this crap. And the episode wraps on a little bit more fake Indian bullshit, and he's doing his...
Which you might notice is taking place. Now, all of a sudden, Chakotay's not too good to go pray in his room.
Yeah, now it's okay. Now he can just do it in his quarters. Whatever. Everything that Aron Eisenberg did in this episode was great, and I loved Car. I loved all the Kazon history, backstory, both said and shown. I thought it did a lot.
Love the Space Cat diplomacy.
I loved Space Cat diplomacy, but you said it exactly correct. Another perfect example of the wrong character as the focus. And another example of a missed opportunity of creating a richer, more layered backstory that they could return to on this show in some way, either by adding supporting players, recurring characters, or a better sense of continuity. And it's a real fucking shame, because this is the show that I think would have benefited the most from it, and it's the only one they didn't do it. Even TNG, which had only a small amount of it, had the right amount of it, with the Klingons and with the Romulans and recurring antagonists therein, and some of the supporting characters that we got to know on the ship itself. And Enterprise, too, had a ton of recurring serial plot lines as the show went on, and what happened previously really built on what happened later, instead of isolated episodes. Voyager seems like would be the perfect place for you to tell a story of the ship traveling through the Delta Quadrant and fundamentally changing everything around them as they went, and gaining allies and enemies that reoccur with more frequency, and picking people up on the ship who buy into their vision. And yet again, another opportunity to do something with that, and they just don't do anything with it. It's just a one shot, and they just move on, and that's it.
And you're talking about, fleshing out backgrounds better. The whole thing you just laid out about the complete disservice to the Chakotay character, where they completely ignore and invalidate his entire backstory.
They do.
By his activities and actions here. Like, just it's boggling.
Shockingly.
It's baffling.
It's absolutely baffling, the dialogue they give him in this. And there's no reflection from him that explains it. Like, it's not like he is been coming to this realization that, he did the wrong thing to fight for the Maquis, and he really wanted to stay. Like, there's nothing to suggest that this is how he felt. Yeah, it could have been like,
it pained me to have to, do these terrible things because of my pacifistic roots. But you could have gone a million different ways, instead you just ignored it and fucked it all up. Overall, what'd you feel about the episode?
I mean, it's an improvement over 37's, but that's, to say it for the third time, not a high bar. Maybe that should be the name of our fucking episode. Not a high bar. The Kazon stuff's good, and I was interested in that. And it kept me very much interested in the beginning, and even after Chakotay just...
infuriated in the end.
And even after Chakotay did his wet diarrhea all over the episode, it still had me interested enough to see it through in an engaged fashion. But another wasted opportunity, another fucked up ending, and more of the same from the Voyager writers. And I'm just not hopeful we're gonna turn it around.
I liked it. Some very obvious weaknesses in it, but they did some really great, probably some of the best world building I've seen in the series so far. Some new ship interiors, a nice view into the Kazon, great guest stars. a genuinely surprising ending on 2 counts. One, I thought they could have brought a good new crew member on board, and 2, Car's about face to kill a mentor rather than the safe play of staging a death on Chakotay. Pretty strong. So as we continue to eat this Voyager shit sandwich, I'm getting really good at choosing what bites I want to take and what to kind of leave behind on my plate. And that I think I'm leveling up on my Voyager watching skills and reducing the pain I'm going through here. Coming up next, Season 2, Episode 3 is called Projections. The program for the emergency medical hologram is activated due to what the computer describes as a ship-wide emergency. That sounds pretty fucking cool.
This is a very, very good episode. I think it's probably because of who directed it. Jonathan Frakes.
Uh-oh.
And we've got our first TNG cameo. Crossover, yeah.
I'm very excited about this, but we made a promise already. If we're going to go along with a new motif for Voyager, who is the worst person to insert into any scene to fix a problem? So I trust in what you're saying that this is going to be a great episode, but if we're going to play this game, if we've got a medical hologram emergency, I think Chakotay is going to be our best fit for the worst person to really somehow focus on resolution for that. Who would your vote be?
Neelix. But
a very strong, someone who's completely unfamiliar with the intricacies of holo engineering.
Yeah, like Chakotay could have like some rational reason to be doing it because he's a Starfleet officer, but Neelix would have no business doing this whatsoever. But it's a Doctor episode, as you might imagine, so we're in good hands in many ways coming up here.
Yeah, I'll look forward to us both being wrong and being rewarded with a pretty cool episode. I think we're due for a very strong one. So
we fucking are.
I'm gonna go ahead and say rest in peace, Season 1. Season 2 looks like it's off to a good start if we exclude the terribleness of the 37s. Another big RIP, rest in peace, Phaser Dick.
Yes, rest in peace, Phaser Dick. Rest in peace, yet another fabulous potential continuity supporting character. And to us, not rest in peace, but farewell to Aron Eisenberg's built arms. May the gun show return to DS9, where it can be put to best use.
If nothing else, Voyager has proven itself to be a slave to its own weaknesses. And in much the same way that Voyager can't seem to get some basic cool shit right, nor can Carr ultimately shed off the burden of ignorance in the Kazon and go off to Lightman and the Federation. I'm going to give you the, fittingly, given his dual nature as Nog over in Deep Space Nine, the 217th rule of acquisition. You can't free a fish from water.
That's actually, of all the ones you've laid out, that feels right for this episode. I like that one, Peter. Well done. On that note, thank you for listening to Voyager Please, a hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm Peter. Thanks for spending an hour with us.
An hour plus, and we will set you adrift on the fine recorder stylings of Ian and Sarah. See you next week. Peace.